November is known as World Vegan Month, and a lot of animal rights organizations and vegan groups usually use this time to highlight the suffering and exploitation of animals, which is commendable. But have you ever noticed why they've been so silent about the genocide in Gaza and the oppression of Palestinians overall? I'll give you a hint. Because somebody else also uses this time for propaganda. Can you guess who? Yep, it's the settler colony of Israel. They've been using animal rights over the past 15-ish years as part of their official Hasbara policy to vegan wash their crimes. And it's tied to their Brand Israel project that started over 20 years ago. In this video, I'm going to cover all the details with a timeline, including government officials, top Israeli vegan influencers, government initiatives, and the media's role in this propaganda. It may be broken into separate parts, so stay tuned, follow, and check out the rest. Now, before we get into how it all started, let's go over some details about the Brand Israel project and its ties to the Israeli government propaganda. Then we'll talk about the connection to the exploitation of the vegan movement in their agenda. Let's give some context first. During the Second Intifada, which is in the early 2000s, the International Court of Justice, ICJ, declared in 2004 that the construction by Israel of a wall in the occupied Palestinian territory and its associated regime are contrary to international law. Surprise, surprise, nothing started on October 7th. That was one of the main factors for BDS, Boycott Divestment Sanctions, to be launched. It is a Palestinian-led movement that was created to end international support for Israeli violations of international law by forcing companies, institutions, and governments to change their policies. That was in 2005. Guess what happened after that? Less than a year after, the Brand Israel project was initiated. It had two purposes. One, improve its public image in the international community's eye in efforts to, two, combat the BDS movement. That way, they can continue to receive international support and investments in its oppressive economy, as well as legitimization on the global stage, rather than working towards justice for the Palestinians. So what is Brand Israel? Let's talk about it. It was created and runs through government officials such as the Prime Minister's Office and the Ministry of Finance. They would later go on to allocate funds to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which received around 30 million US dollars between 2007 and 2010, and they also allocated funds to the Tourism Ministry to the amount of $11 million in 2007. Much of this budget went to free trips to international artists to visit Israel and promote the culture they stole from Palestinians. They also allocated funds to the Ministry of Strategic Affairs to the amount of 64 million US dollars between 2016 and 2017. And the purpose for this was to combat BDS. Now, some key takeaways that you really need to keep in mind when you look at the Brand Israel project in order to understand all their propaganda and their official Hasbara campaign. According to the foreword, they had an initial meeting in 2005, just when BDS started, where they examined research and surveys from American marketing executives like Young and Rubicam, and it was found that Israel is only associated with war by young Americans, both Jews and non-Jews. It concluded that, in order for them to win supporters, they would have to be seen as, quote, relevant and modern rather than only as a place of fighting and religion. And in a 2006 Brand survey, it was stated that Israel faces steep challenges, quote, if its intentions is to promote itself as a desirable place to live and invest in. Let me say that one more time. To live and invest in. Those two things is exactly what drives their propaganda. For American and foreign Jews to want to live there, they need to feel relevant to the settler colony of Israel. And in order to get more investments, in other words, to combat BDS, they need to be shown as modern and technologically advanced. We'll talk about that later. As a result of these surveys, the government created this program, Brand Israel, for the coming decades, with a series of propaganda campaigns like art washing, pink washing, greenwashing, and so many more. There are many parties that play into this, but I want to talk about two of them. Israel 21C, which is an American publication with a goal to avoid stories about Israel's conflict. Instead, their purpose is to focus on innovation and culture in order to create a positive image. Eventually, they would become one of the top promoters of Israel's alternative protein industry, as well as food tech, which highlights Israel's vegan culture. The other one is a group that I'm sure you're familiar with, Hillel International. This is a campus organization for Jewish students outside of Israel, and their purpose is to make them relate to Israel as part of their national identity. I'll cover it later on, but they would also become one of the main promoters of Israel's vegan culture by partnering with Israeli vegan influencers to give lectures on US campuses to educate about veganism in Israel. I'm going to be jumping back and forth between the timeline here because I think it's important to highlight some things that I want you to keep in mind as I go through this process. So, during a 2018 event called the Israel Exchange, which was co-hosted by Israel 21C, whose president is named Amy Friedman, who is also a former president of AIPAC. Yes, AIPAC. And a person named Joanna Landau, who is the founder of Vibe Israel. Remember these names. They invited members of Israel's tourism ministry and the organizer of Brand Israel, his name is Idu Haroni, as well as Young and Rubicam CEO, the marketing executive that helped with Brand Israel. Those were speakers, and their mission was to discuss strategies to help American Jewish organizations to incorporate the Brand Israel messaging in their work. So remember these things. 2018, Israel 21C, Vibe Israel, Tourism Ministry, and 2 members who participated in creating the Brand Israel project. These are all signs that they wanted to create campaigns specifically to whitewash their oppression of Palestinians. And they wanted to do that through culture, art, and many other things that the West can relate to Israel to see them more modern and relate to as a place for Jews to live in and foreigners to invest in. Now back to the original question. Why are so many animal rights organizations and vegan groups silent about the genocide in Gaza and the oppression of Palestinians? Well, Israel went through something called the vegan revolution to be presented to the West as a beacon of morality within the animal rights group. And this gave them a cover to the international community so that they would stop criticizing Israel or to divert their attention from their crimes and instead tout it as a vegan nation and a leader in animal rights. We're going to go through a timeline of this vegan revolution and how it became the vegan capital of the world, which, by the way, is a self-proclaimed title that Israelis created, and they continue to propagate and repeat in order to gain legitimacy in the international animal rights movement. We'll continue this conversation in part 2 of this video.